Hello and welcome to Blue Tinted Glasses. This is the match preview for a huge game. It's Leicester City versus Fulham. And today we are joined by the preview specialist even. It's Luke from LCFC Down Under, and he's making me slur my words because look at those blue tinted glasses he's wearing. I thought I had the best, but I've been put in my place. Luke, howdy. Good day. How are you? What's going on? And where did you get those fine glasses from?
Man, I'm going to need these glasses for this preview, I think, or I'm going to sound absolute squeaky bum time. I got these from the internet. These are some beautiful Oakleys. And yes, looking forward to doing this preview, kind of. Yeah, how are you, mate?
Well, look, I think like a lot of Leicester fans, we've seen better days. 6 losses in a row is obviously extremely painful. We just did the match analysis on the show. I think looking back at it and doing the analysis, there were moments where we played quite well, especially in that first half. But I think we're all extremely disappointed that Palace didn't really play particularly well. And it's another game where there was points to be had and we didn't get anything. And we can't keep that continuing. We've got to pick up points. Now, Fulham is, of course, a game that we lost earlier in the season. It was a close affair. But how's it going to go this time round? Well, you're going to tell us. So let's start, shall we?
Let's start, mate. So Fulham, disappointing. Graham Potter's got a result against them and 2 goals that were, I'll be honest with you, mate, 2 of those 3 goals were pretty poor to concede from Fulham. And I think a lot of Fulham fans would agree. However, they feel like they should be hopefully competing for the European spot. So they're feeling very optimistic under Marco Silva. He's got that squad camaraderie there. He rotates his players, so he keeps everyone involved. I think he's a very good manager, and we'll get onto that shortly. But as you can see, we'll get into our form later, but there's not really much to talk about. If you're a Leicester City fan, you know how horrible we've been. It's just depressing and ill, isn't it?
It is. I suppose the one advantage is at the time we did this, we didn't have the Ipswich and Southampton games, but they both lost yesterday as well. So as it stands, we haven't yet fallen behind in the race to stay up. But I mean, it's looking grim right now. We really need something to happen, and we need it to happen quickly.
We've got the statistics here for the last game. Now, you can see here, they've had a lot of possession, Fulham. They've had a lot of shots, but very similar to us. It doesn't matter if you don't put them away. It doesn't mean anything. You don't get the points at the end of the day. 4 shots, 3 on target, and they scored all of them. So
wow,
I know
that's brutal. And they had 21 shots. Well, I didn't see that game, but that sounds like an absolute robbery.
There was a borderline, just quickly, there was a borderline tap in on the cards for Traore at the very end of the game, and he skied it over the bar. Granted, there was a lot of West Ham players ready there to block it, but they looked like they were going to get the equaliser in the last 5 minutes, but unfortunately, that was not the case if you're a Fulham fan.
Okay. I hope we get some of that luck against them.
This is the lineup going into that game. Castagna, we're well familiar with him. And you got now. What's worth bringing up here is you've got Wilson here on the right-hand side starting. Traore, as I mentioned, did come on. And it's something to point out that Silva likes to rotate his players quite a lot, which I think if you've got the squad depth to do it, I think it's good because it gives everyone the belief. It keeps everyone on their toes. If you're not going to play well, you're not starting the next week. And it gives the person that's on the bench or the squad option to be able to step up and know that if someone's not underperforming, they're going to have their chance. So who here really stands out for you here, Neil? Who's the real danger man that you're going to talk about later on the show?
Well, actually, for me, it might be a bit different to you, but it's got to be Anthony Robinson. And the reason for that is because if you look at it, he's actually, I think, got 9 assists in the league already, despite being a fullback. He's been linked with Liverpool. So, yeah, he's having the season of his life. It looks like at the moment, if you look at teams of the year, he's actually sneaking into quite a few of the pundits team of the year as the left back. So I think he's having an outstanding season. Smith Rowe, I think, was really good against us last time. But, the thing that is slightly depressing when you look at this lineup, I mean, it is actually, to be honest with you, is Timothy Castagna, just because you can see that for Fulham, Castagna is just a squad option. And that's what used to be the case of Leicester, is like a player like Castagna wasn't even first choice, right? It was like rotation between him, Ricardo, JJ. And yeah, you can just see that if someone who we've sold then for 20 million, who would probably, I'm guessing he would be involved in our team right now in terms of quality, and he might not even start for them in this game. So that's, I think, the real sort of level of the squad in the Premier League. But Who about for you? I mean, like I said, they've got quality all over. Anderson signed from Palace, really good defender. Leno played for Arsenal, good keeper. Iwobi scored against us from Arsenal, played well against Everton against us a few seasons ago. One thing that maybe surprised me is they got Raul Jimenez up front, because last season it was Rodrigo Muniz who was doing really well, but I think he's not in so much form. So that's maybe a position that they could improve. But otherwise, it's a very solid team. We know they play well. And as you say, they've got a great squad.
Absolutely. Castagna didn't even come off the bench last game. It's worth mentioning as well before we move on.
Wow.
We just talked about this. Yeah, 6 on the trot, about to be 7, most likely, if you're feeling deflated like me. Statistics, again, we mentioned it, 21 shots, 4 on target. We didn't score 1, and 4 shots on target for Palace, and they scored 2. We had more possession, but again, stats don't win games. It looks good on paper, but football's not played on paper, unfortunately, Anil.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what we said in the analysis. There were reasons to be positive, but at the end of the day, we need to get points, and we need them now. And to be honest with you, we need wins.
We need wins, and we'll talk about this later in the game when I pull up the 11, but I expect there to be a few changes because of the nature of, the quick little time between games.
Mm-hmm.
But to be honest with you, mate, before we move on, this is starting to look like a championship best 11, and this is the best 11 we have available, which is, you mentioned this to me in private earlier, this is a very harsh reality we're starting to face.
Yeah, I suppose the only difference is last time round we had he brought in, had Vestergaard and Fass. It'd be interesting to see if he keeps Vestergaard, though, who made the mistake for one of their goals, which obviously, wasn't too much fun.
Marco Silva. Okay, Marco Silva's teams are known for their attacking style, which involve building from the back and exploring spaces to attack. Positional play. Silva's teams are known for the positional play, which involves creating passing angles to gain positional superiority. And the defensive structure teams are known for the defensive structure, which involves setting a compact block in the midfield to force the opposition to play outside. I also want to mention just quickly as well, before we move on to this as well, that we've already basically mentioned it, but he rotates his players heavily. So that's something that I think is important. So he's basically got the fans behind him as well as the players. So he's, as I said, excellent man managing from Marco Silva.
Yeah, and that allows them to press because obviously the players are more rested. And, that's what we saw against Palace, is that we pressed really well in the first half, but in the second half, the press wasn't there because players got tired.
Yes. So we've got the build-up play here. So you got basically, this is kind of similar to what we went through last week, but your keeper will come up and work, and then as your centre back will look for obviously the option between the double pivot, who would then distribute it to either the wing back, and then that will go to the winger. And basically, we'll touch on this later because I know you've got it ready with their passing triangles coming out from the back. Is there anything that you want to add to this, Anil, with your expertise?
I have seen Fulham sometimes, especially earlier in the season. You can see that they're building in a 4-3-3, and here they've only got 1 CDM and they've got 2 8s. Actually, the last time that we played them, they actually had 2 6s and just 1 number 10, which was interesting. We'll see what they do this time round. I've got a feeling that given that they're in better form, that they will probably play something more like this because they'll probably feel a little bit more confident. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It just determines who's going to be picked up at what point in the phase of the attack.
Here you got the build-up rotations. So Fulham constantly rotate during the build-up. The team adopts a dynamic approach, shifting between formations to create numerical advantages and exploit spaces. Marco Silva's focus is always to get the players into their best positions where they can make the most out of their individual skills. He emphasizes versatility. So if you look here, basically, they're compressing it to one side of the pitch. You've got your passing triangles, you've got your 6s, you've got your 8s, and then you've got your wing back that can push up the pitch. And essentially what they're trying to do is give a lot of give and goes, pull people out of position, and then exploit the space in between, and then progress the ball up the pitch where you've got basically been caught with your pants down. Anything that you want to add to that?
Well, we've got an example of how they did that against us last season. You can already see in this top shot, like you're pointing at here, it's really good, that here you've got a very dangerous attack here. You've got Smith Rowe, Iwobi, and Robinson. All of these are good players. Here's the passing triangle. But the way that they're set up is sometimes they see Iwobi's the wide man, but he's come inside this time. Robinson's gone on the outside. But sometimes around they'll rotate that and it'll be a different one. Or sometimes it might be Smith Rowe. So it gives the defenders quite a challenge because you're not sure who to pick up and when. And the one time you've been caught not picking up the right man, well, you'll come to it, you're going to get exploited.
This is where counter movement. So I'll let you take this one, mate, because I think you'll be better at answering this than me. I don't want to butcher it, but what are your thoughts on this? And I'll come afterwards.
Well, look, this is pretty standard in the Premier League. Is that if you create a transition moment, you try and find that player quickly, try and progress the ball vertically high up the pitch. But what you're seeing here is that people are just moving in certain ways to make extra space. So here you see Iwobi's coming back in. So you can see the striker, Raul Jimenez, doesn't go this way. So now you're going to make the space because Iwobi's coming in. There's going to be the space in behind him. So this is like a well-orchestrated pattern of play. And the trigger that they'll be going for here is they're waiting for Robinson, and, you know, they know that the thing is, as soon as he picks up the ball in this sort of part of the area, to make those movements. And here you've got the same sort of example. So here you've got Smith Rowe. So again, you see that one of the players up there, I guess it is a striker again, has dropped back, and that's going to allow now the fullback to come through. So this again is like the continual theme of the triangles, but the rotations, and when does one go, when does one doesn't. And what's really clever is that, you know, if he just plays this ball and these two players stand there, then the space isn't there. But by making this clever movement, all of a sudden you create space where there wasn't space before. And yeah, it takes a lot of time on the training ground to these kind of movements to get them right, and it's really smooth when it works. And you have to give Silva a lot of credit that he's managed to do that for many teams over the years.
That's a transition. This is where basically this is what scares me. So kind of similar to the last game, but like essentially like pressing triggers. Now, if let's say, for instance, that Ndidi was in the team and there was an offensive transition trigger, it would be most likely Ndidi that would be the trigger where everyone pushes up the pitch the second he gets on the ball. He's not as confident on his feet sometimes, and he can sometimes, you know, have the first touch of a donkey. But I'm not slating Wilfred Ndidi, but I'm just pointing out that if I was Marco Silva and I was lining up to shape up for Leicester City and he was in a double pivot position, that would be the defensive trigger to then have your offensive transition where everyone moves together and you push with 5, not 4, and the options in the space creates. And hopefully, if you're a Fulham fan, it's an effective transition. What are your thoughts, Anil?
Well, that's exactly what they did to us in the first game, actually. And that's why, actually, then in future games, Cooper started moving Ndidi a little bit further up. But look, Ndidi's not going to be playing in this one. It'll be interesting to see if they try and do that to Samare and Winks. But that might give us an advantage because both those two are better on the ball. But at the same time, we might be losing some of the midfield duels. So we'll have to see how that pays off.
Overlaps. Okay, so essentially here, the overlaps is all about 2v1. Okay, it's about basically your winger drawing the fullback, and then the second player provides the other option. You got your give and go, and then you can incorporate everyone else, as well as integrating the crossing option across the pitch if someone makes the run on the other side. So this is where we will talk about a lot more in detail later, but it's one area, if we all are familiar, then the right-hand side that could be 100% exploited, particularly if JJ's pushed further up the pitch and he's in no man's land. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, well, this might lead us on to someone who might make their debut, I suppose, in the team. So why don't you talk about this guy and where he might fit in?
You brought this up first when we were watching the game, but I'll let you take this. But what's interesting is, could he be deployed as a right winger now, or a right back, and you kick JJ further up the pitch? But if you ask me, this guy can play with both feet. Now, if JJ is going to be caught out of position all the time, now I understand, right, that you don't really want to take Boyanate off the pitch as your right winger who drifts in because he's one of our better players. But would the trade-off be worth it? Could we see that as... I don't expect him to start, but I can absolutely possibly see him to come off the bench and go into that position for Boyanate. And then that way, JJ does not have to worry because he's most likely going to be matched up against Iwobi, who is a very physical, dominant presence, and he just cannot afford to be getting up the pitch and getting caught out transition. Now, I will point out he didn't really get exposed in the last game, but we've seen it enough times as it is. So what are your thoughts on Warrior? He has the left-footed option. If he's to be used as an auxiliary right winger, he could defend up further up the pitch as well as cut into the inside and use his left foot. And that gives us another option off that right-hand side. Because right now, we don't look that threatening off that side, to be honest with you, other than JJ in the QPR game. What are your thoughts, mate? Is he going to be the next, bang-on signing? We know we signed Mahrez and Kante for very little money. People, and myself included, calling him a Poundland signing. Are you feeling optimistic about him? What are your thoughts? Because Ruud van Nistelrooy, as you want to point out, is high on him.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have no idea. I've not really seen him play other than some of the scouting reports that we did. But I found it interesting that Van Nistelrooy really spoke quite highly of him in his press conference. Like, they'd done a lot of research. He said they watched tons of videos. They went to see him play. I think they did phone calls to find out about his character, and it's sort of implied that he's going to be coming into the team pretty quickly. He signed a 5-year deal. I mean, that could be for PSR reasons, but still, that implies that he's going to be used quite quickly. And why is he going to be used? So there's a few reasons. But what we wanted to bring up is literally what Fulham did to us in the previous game that we played against them. So you've mentioned the 2v1s, the counter movements, the rotations, the triangles that they're trying to do, where they try and find a player free here. It'll be either a winger, a 10, or one of the 8. And what happened the last time we played them? At this point in the game, it's 1-1. It was actually quite a close game. We'd actually scored off a corner. We haven't done that in a while to bring it level at 1-1. Here's Anthony Robinson, and here's one of his assists that he got this season. So you can see again what they've done is that JJ got lured in to try and press Robinson here. And with the counter movements, what happened is that you've got Iwobi here, and he's got the wrong side of wings. And here you got Yannick, who we know isn't the fastest player there at the back. And what ends up happening? So he plays the ball over, you see those 3, and boom. JJ's caught way up pitch here. Winks is too slow to get back. Yannick, no chance. Plays the same, and Iwobi can just run straight in. And it's a pretty easy finish. Perhaps, I know you could argue that maybe Mads could do a bit better here, but I mean, still, it's 1-on-1 and Iwobi put it away, and that was disappointing. So what does that mean? To be honest, there's a few things here. What I will say is that probably the mistake here with the kind of full of movement is that because JJ goes, you can see that this is just space. Like Wings ideally needs to be goal side of him in this movement. Or will it be a case of, look at the movements here. This is well, actually, indeed, he's over here. So in this case, I don't know, is this IU or it might even be Fatau who's come over here to try and block Robinson. So we need to be careful here. So if we are going to use Koulibaly, there's a few things he could do. One, in terms of the offensive side, I would like to see him being used the same sort of way that Robinson is done for Fulham, right? Where he's significantly contributing to the attack and joining up. So that's one thing he could do. But what I'm wondering, this is, maybe even like a tin hat foil territory, sort of, foil tin hat territory, is that maybe you even could see JJ coming into defense to be the right centre back. So we've got more additional pace there. So Woyo joins up. Basically, he mentioned a lot that he's athletic and he's fast. And I think that's one of the big things that is definitely true. Like even yesterday against when we did the analysis for Palace, is Vestergaard's lack of pace that catches us out. Vestergaard does really help with the build up of the attack, but for sure, having him in the team is a flaw. But, teams like Man City have for years managed to get away with that by having someone like Kyle Walker, who's a really fast player who can deal with things here. So I still feel actually, this was just a mistake in terms of the way that Cooper set up the team. And this is why, you could blame JJ here. But the thing is that like if Justin's been told that in this instance, you've got to go to that player, that this player's taken a long time to get out to Robinson there, then he's just doing his job. And then there's the lack of communication to who's going to pick up this particular player. So I'm just wondering if us putting him in the team, because we'll have more pace in the team. And that's why I could actually see Justin and Koulibaly playing at the same time, just because you've got 2 fast players who can do it. And that might give you additional coverage on the defensive phase of the game. I think, look, most likely it's just going to be a rotation option. Justin's been played every game for a long time, but keep your eye out on that one. There's many ways he could be used. Do you know what? Even Koulibaly could come in as a left back. Even he can use his left foot. So I don't know. But yeah, it surprised me that it did. Originally, I just thought that he would be a rotation option. But as I say, from that press conference, it sounds more like he might be used more heavily than we think he will.
Fair enough, mate. Just one last thing you could add to that as well is if Victor Christensen's not been bad, but you could almost make the argument you could have JJ move back over to the left where we think he's more comfortable, and then you could have Koulibaly, I got to get better at saying his name, Woyo, playing on the right-hand side. So at least we've got that option as well, particularly if, let's say, Victor Christensen was to get injured. But yeah, moving on.
Just on that, I've got to say, I'm not sure that will happen just because I think the way that Ruud uses his fullbacks is he does want them to cross the ball into the box. So I suppose Justin can do that with his left foot, but I think it's not his natural foot. That's why I think it would be more likely that he would, in that case, play Koulibaly if he can use his left foot a bit better. But let's see. It's all speculation. We'll find out in the next few games, right?
Too easy, mate. Defensive strategy analysis. Let's get into it. So defensive formation, basically your compact 4-4-2. They do play a mid-block out of possession as well, very similar to us. It's nothing that we're new to here. It's something that a lot of teams will do in the Premier League, other than the last team we played and a few others. But essentially, out of possession, everyone drops into a 4-4-2. Defensive transitions. Okay, why don't you take me through this one, Anil? It looks like you've got Rashford in the bottom here.
Well, this is exactly what you mentioned about why he rotated players, and you also got your pressing trigger right here. So yeah, at certain points in time, they're going to look to it, and you can see that the way that they're positioned is that you look. Well, here's the example. I mean, it's really trying to make it difficult for this player to get out. As you say, that's Rashford there. 5 players going to close you down, win the ball back, and that's going to set up your offensive transition. So what they do is they tend to stay in their mid block, but they're definitely looking for pre-calculated pressing triggers. That's what they're looking for. Last time around when we played them, as we said, what was interesting is that they were basically trying to prevent the pass going to Harry Winks, but they were allowing the pass to Wilfred Ndidi. And the reason why they were allowing the pass to him is as soon as he got the ball, that was the pressing trigger that they were using. So it'll be interesting to see if they do something similar again. Which player will they pick? They'll probably pick 1 or 2 players, and when that player gets the ball, they'll try to close them down, win the ball back, and use that to do their counter transitions. So yeah, they're very effective at it. And yeah, the big thing, as you mentioned, is because of their squad, it means that they can rotate their players so they can press more actively during the game, even if they play multiple games a week.
Exactly, because the way that they do that is very aggressive, and they're attacking with 4 or 5 players, as you can see here. And the more rattled the team gets, so like I said, let's say that we go 1 goal down and they start playing like this, you could see a capitulation if players are at the floor with their confidence, because you will see a lot more errors. People will panic, they'll turn the ball over, and they've already got 4 or 5 people closing you down. If you send a blind pass anyway, they're going to capitalize on it, and bang, there you've got your defensive transition. That's now an offensive transition, and you have 5 people screaming down, and you could have someone caught out of position. So this is dominant. And like you pointed out, Neil, you're very right to point out that if you have heavily rotation, you have the legs and you have the gas tank to play like this. So this scares me most if we were to go 1 goal down, particularly if it would be from an error or a mistake and players start panicking. This is when this can really come to haunt you, mate.
Mm-hmm.
Ruud van Nistelrooy. So this is a quote talking about the game. It all looked well in the first half. We should have scored 1 or more 2 goals from the chances we created. We hardly gave a chance away, but in the second half, we weren't good enough. So finally, he's come out and pointed it out. The level dropped, the intensity in the first goal they scored changed the game. We were strong in the first half, and Palace probably not that much. Very true. They stepped it up in the second half, and we dropped in our level. The first goal was a big blow for us. He's calling it out, Anil. He's just not good enough, mate. That second half was just criminal. It was very, very frustrating because I just felt like we got blue balled that whole game into chances in that first half and kept thinking that we're going to create something. We didn't even score a goal.
Yeah, well, at the same time, it's not his fault when your GOAT is missing 4 or 5 opportunities, and then he brought on Daka later, and Daka also missed chances. But yeah, I think he's right to say that. I saw a number of the players after the game said that as well. And the biggest difference, like I say, is that out in the second half is they stopped pressing as intensely, and it gave control of the game to Palace. And I think what was really disappointing is like literally the first shot on target that they had, they scored, and that's something that we've got to really worry about. You got to take advantage when you're on top, and you've got to be able to defend better when you are having those spells of pressure where the other teams have got on top. Because I think the difference is that Fulham are a much better team. They're in the top half of the table for a reason. So you would expect them to have more passages of play where they're the better team. And so we're going to have to ride out those spells. But look, it's good that he said that. But at the end of the day, talk is cheap, right? It's time for action.
100%. Hopefully they've got a bollocking. Key battle. Now, it might not be this, but this is my most likely option. But I will point out that Emil Smith is not... Is it Smith Rowe? I get that mixed up all the time.
Yeah, Smith Rowe.
Smith Rowe. It's backwards here, so apologies for the graphic here. Smith Rowe has not been really up to... He was really good against us, as you pointed out earlier, but as of recent, like a lot of fans have kind of, I wouldn't say turned on him, but have questioned and called out his form as of recent. But to me, still, he's one of the most dangerous players. And we'll come on to the stats in a second. But for me, Boubakary Soumaré has to step up and he has to mark him with his physical presence. In my opinion, Wicks cannot do it.
Okay, well, that's going to be interesting because the positions that he takes up, he drifts around a lot. But you're right, we'll have to keep an eye on him. And of course, he had a great game against us in the first tight encounter earlier in the season, game number 2 of the season, and he scored. And he showed actually there that when they pressed, he got the ball, and I think that led to his goal.
Okay. Obviously, complete different positions, but he's got completely nearly dominated every asset except one thing here between the two stats. One thing we want to take on here is look at the successful take-ons from Boubakary Soumaré, which is pivotal. And what comes after that successful take-on is the most important stat, in my opinion, that he has here, and that is progressive carriers. So essentially, you were right to point out that I put him on the wrong side of the double pivot. But you have on each side, you have him on the left-hand side of the double pivot, and that's your ball carrying off that one side. And on the other side, you have Buonanotte, should he be playing if he's drifting. So you got basically your ball carriers on the left and right-hand side and those two, and they're sorely needed after the loss of Keaton and Dewsbury Hall. The pass completion is phenomenal from Emil Smith-Rowe. You got 99% and 83 here for Samari, and it's something that you and I have both called out that he could improve. I wouldn't say it's absolutely terrible, but it's not top-notch either. And as well, and Neil, you said to me, is Samari playing really better, or are we just devoid of that many options and now he's finally getting his chance in the team? Why don't you talk about these stats, mate, and give your opinion on what you said to me? And sorry if I threw you under the bus there.
No, that's good. I mean, that's interesting. That, to be fair, that's something that Locks pointed out to me. And he said, well, yeah, look, at the moment, Vestergaard and Samari are in our team. But the last time that we got relegated, they were in the squad and they never played. And the reason is because they weren't as good as other players like Tielemans, I was going to say Sayunchi, but for whatever reason, we were putting in Daniel Amate at that point in time, right? But it would have been like Tielemans and Didi, other people that were playing more in that role at the time. However, you can see that, I think the big difference we've seen with Samari this season is that, his interceptions, the tackles, and the blocks, he's doing a lot more of that. Compared to Ndidi, I mean, they're nowhere close, but he is still having a good impact on that. You can see that he does carry the ball forwards. As we know, he takes on players. All this is pretty good. So I think he has improved a lot. I think he's not the finished article. I do think from an offensive point of view, I mean, look at that. Shots total, assists, very low. And there was a moment, again, we showed in the analysis where Samari picks up the ball, starts driving forwards. He's the furthest player forward for Leicester. And instead of continuing to charge, he literally stopped, waited, and then played the pass. And you even see Buonanotte sort of go, oh, what are you doing? Why don't you keep going and start the attack? As it happened, we still made a good opportunity out of it, but I think that's something he can improve to his game. But comparing these two, actually, it's interesting you mentioned that the Fulham fans aren't that happy with Emil Smith-Rowe. And to be honest with you, if you look at these stats, I can understand why, because it's all good. You can see this. He's obviously pressing and being a team player and he's passing it. But for someone who's playing as a number 10, where are the goals? Where are the assists? That's what we'd be asking. If this was Bilal El Khanous or Facundo Buonanotte, you'd be like, look, actually, your offensive stats aren't that much different to a CDM. This you'd understand for a Boukari Samari player because you're receiving it off the centre backs and you're there to distribute it to other people. Here you're supposed to be an attacking outlet. So that's actually quite surprising because he looked like a really shrewd signing early on in the season. But to be fair, I don't think he's a bad player. Maybe he just hasn't quite found his way in the system yet. So we'll see what happens with that. Oh, here we go then. So talk me through, what do you think is the lineup going to be?
Okay. I can't believe I've done this, so I'm going to put my glasses on. Let's start with up top. Let's do it back. Actually, you know what? We'll work our way to it. But we've got Stalacic in goals. FaZe, I think, had a really good game. Let's put FaZe in again. Justin, I haven't put Woyo Koulibaly in because I can't see him being integrated straight away into the starting 11, but maybe I'll eat my words.
Nah, he won't start. I don't see him starting. Yeah.
I don't either without too many training sessions. I think he hasn't even trained with him yet, I believe. So
yeah.
Yannick Vestergaard, now he's been at fault now twice for a goal. He's a key player in playing it at the back and line breaking passes and connecting between him and the double pivot and then further up the pitch. But the trade-off with pace is now starting to show itself. Now, I've put him in because I'm willing to give him one more chance just because of his line breaking passes and his setup and his distribution. But mate, if he gets caught out again, I'm already starting to think, why aren't we seeing more of a Coley? I don't think he's been that bad where we deserve to see him frozen out. And the fact that we've spent that much money on him, unless we're going to move him on, I think we need to develop a Coley in some sense so we can at least put him in the shop window or at least get some of our money back, because Vestergaard's 33? He's not for the future, mate. And it's another stupid extension of a contract, but that's a conversation for another time. Christensen, thought he had a good game, mate. I thought he had a really good game, actually. Well, not really good, but decent. And Boubakary Samari and Winks is your double pivot option. Now, you could maybe make the argument for Skip coming in for Winks because he's been poor of recent, sort of, but I just can't see Skip doing enough to get in front of him, although I think it's worth mentioning that maybe, just maybe, he might come in. El Khanous, our now 10, legend. This is a big game for him, mate. We're really depending on him to step up and link up the play and start being a bit more of a goal threat. Now, I don't want him to be thinking that he's Kevin De Bruyne yet, because he's not. He had a couple of chances outside the box that were ridiculous. But as a 10, you do kind of need that arrogance and confidence to take it. But if you miss once badly, don't do it again. Just link up the play, mate. Yeah. We need more box crashing from him, Buonanotte, inside the final third. Buonanotte, right-hand side for me, not Ayew, and Mavididi on the left, because we really don't have an out-and-out winger right now. I will mention, though, he drifted in quite a lot last game, and that's something we'll point out in a second. Daka. Right, this is why I've got the glasses on. I'm not Daka's biggest fan, man, but we can't have a 30-year-old Vardy who's missing chance after chance, and he's just played 2 games in a week basically already. He needs the rest. He needs the legs. Maybe as an impact sub. I know you guys all don't agree with me, would love for Cannon to start and flex him more in that transfer window, because I believe if we go down, which is looking like right now, we have a proven championship striker. Daka will have 1 final year in his contract remaining. He didn't impress me at all in the championship, really. And I would hope we could move him on for something if that were to come to that and just have a proven striker. But by all accounts, there's many people keen on him, whether it be Sunderland and many other options as well in the championship that are willing to pay for him now. Probably most likely he's not coming in. So I've gone for Daka, mate. Talk to me what you would change of this and what your thoughts are.
I think that's very solid. I think that could well be what it is. I think you're right to say that even if Vardy had been scoring goals, the point is that to play 3 games in that space of time doesn't sound like the best. He does actually look a bit physically fatigued. So I think we do need to rotate him there. As you say, he can always come on later. And, you know, Daka, if nothing else, he'll be able to press. And I think it's important being at home that we start with some intensity. That said, Vardy was linking up the play extremely well in that game. Daka was doing it okay, though, to be fair to him, better than we'd seen in previous games, so I can understand that. I think your point about Tom Cannon's really interesting. I don't think he will play any part in this particular game, but what I have seen sort of Ruud say, and it's not just the case with Cannon, but he also brought back like Sammy Braybrook as well, and I'm wondering if what he's actually doing, Ruud, is he's conscious of the fact that we might go down. And if we are going to go down and we are going to have these PSR and, you know, the EFL is going to dick us, is that he's thinking, okay, but who in that squad can I work with? And therefore I might give them game time. And even if they're not actually playing in the first team, but he says to him, say, hey, Tom, right, you're not going to play so much this season, but you're going to be my main man for next season. So I want you to start learning the patterns of play and being involved in it. At first, I thought, no, there's no way that will happen. But I actually think we might see him not transfer for a few days or even a week while Ruud actually gives him some training sessions to figure out what he's there, because he's probably thinking a few things. He's probably thinking, do we need to just sign another brand new striker right now? Is he not ready right now, but I can use him in the future? Or is he somewhere in the middle? He's probably done that. And he's probably looked at how he's in the championship. And, you know, he will obviously have thought as well, hang on a minute. You know, we might want to sell him, but if all of the top 3 or 4 teams in the championship all want to sign him, because Sunderland going for promotion, you know, Sheffield United going for promotion, that's what they all have in common. They could be Premier League teams next year. So that implies that they think he could be a Premier League striker. So I think that's one to keep an eye on. I could see that, although my gut feeling is I still think he will be sold and we will perhaps use the money. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good lineup. I think we still need the options. And actually, the thing that I'm thinking more and more, and I don't think this is a surprise, even from the start of the season, but I don't know who he would get, but I think the one obvious upgrade that would make the biggest difference for Leicester would be an upgraded Yannick Vestergaard. If you could find someone who could do what he can do, but is faster and better defensively, I'm telling you, the team would improve probably by 20 to 30%, in my opinion, because I think the way that we play is that there has to be sacrifices made to incorporate him into the team. Now, he does do a lot of good stuff, so I understand why he's in the team, but I think it's just a fact that if you look at top level teams, if you've got someone like a Kanji or Ake that can do all that kind of line breaking passes, but they're not going to get caught out so defensively, then, you know, it means you can be more aggressive, you can be more confident because you don't have to watch out for it. So I don't know if they're going to do that, but that would be, you know, we have mentioned that they might be looking for either, well, we know it's like a left winger, they said, and it might be a centre back. So I'm curious. And we were linked with we've got a Christiansen, but we were linked with a Christensen from Udinese, and he also looked a bit like Vestergaard, but slightly faster because he's younger. Keep your eye out for that one.
Sorry, Neil, can you just go back for a second? Because there's a good point I want to just quickly bring up for Daka, because you mentioned this last season a lot when I was hating on him. Now, if Daka was to play the false 9 position, and if he were to drop deep, receive the ball and link up play and dish it out either to Kounoussi if he drifts out left, Mavididi, or Boynote on the right, the difference between him and Vardy is he's still got the pace and he is quick. So if Daka's able to play into that false 9 position, drop deep, receive the ball, dish it out, and then remake a run forward as a striker normally would, he's most likely going to have his centre-back that's playing on him in no man's land. So that is the best option that I think we can see for Daka. Even if he doesn't score, you mentioned to me he's drawing a centre-back out of position, and it gives him a more advantageous chance for one of our box-crashing 8s to get into the box. And I think that's where possibly we could hurt Fulham, because we're going to be more clinical in the final third and more systematically. I'm not saying just basically walk it in, but not taking pop shots from outside the box and looking desperate. What are your thoughts on that for Daka and being utilised in that way?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's the sad thing with Daka. Where he is right now at his age, he should be in the prime of his career. He should be getting 10, 15, 20 goals in the Premier League. That's why we signed him. It's been a few years now. I think it was acceptable for the first year to be like, okay, you're having to come in and you've got a goat ahead of you. You might not quite be at that level, even the second season, but this long in the English game. And I'm just going to be honest with you, Luke, that is the reason why we as Leicester are struggling so much, right? There needs to be now big time difference makers. With Kanoos, he looks good, but he's only 20 years old. So that's why he's going to be inconsistent, right? But I would say that if we want to stay up, then the players who are in their prime, I think Mavadidi's another one. Those are the sort of players that they need to absolutely be the difference makers. They need to be playing at a level where you're like, okay, they will keep us up. They're going to get those 4 or 5 goals. In Daka's case, 10, although he's not going to hit 10 between now and the end of the season. Or can he? To be fair, Iheanacho a few seasons ago, he came into the team and he got on that run of form that just, rocketed us up the table and got us to 5th place in the FA Cup final. So, look, I feel Daka, there's a lot to like about him, right? He's fast, he can press. Actually, his link-up play has improved, but he just hasn't, ever really got, as you say, people say he's got trampoline shoes. Look, I'm not pinning my hopes on him, but it was funny how last season it looked like he was going to be leaving the club completely. He was linked with Bournemouth. Then he comes into the team and then all of a sudden he did go on a run of form and started scoring goals. And I was like, wow, is he actually our best striker? And then, of course, he fell away again, which was really sad after the Cup of Nations. So, look, who knows? But I do think, Luke, that if we are going to stay up, that's kind of what happened in our Great Escape season as well. Is you're going to need 1 or 2 players to all of a sudden explode and get on the run of form and show you what you could do. And I think the differences of Leicester this season is that people are underperforming. There's only really been to be honest with you, I think there's only been one player all season long that's overperformed, and that's Mads Hermansen. If we're being brutally honest, he's the only one who every single game has a good game, did amazing, and you're like, we're going to be so screwed if this player got injured, and he did get injured, and that's why we did get screwed. No one else is consistently putting in those kind of performances, and we need someone to do
it. Closing thoughts. Leicester City needs to be more clinical in the final third. Very, very frustrating. We move really fast from back to front, and sometimes that build-up play is really impressive, i.e. the first 45 minutes, about 20-minute period of that game in the first half. Excellent. The product was not there in the final third. Is that down to quality, or is that down to being desperate, positional play? There's many things you could highlight and call out, but I think you did an excellent job in your analysis, mate. The slow start to the second half, this is the biggest one for me. This has been a problem all season, whether it be from Cooper or Ruud van Nistelrooy. The slow start to the second half 100% needs to be addressed. I don't know what it is, but it just looks like we just brain farted the first 5-10 minutes, and it set the tempo for the rest of the second half. And just the performance was not there whatsoever. It was lethargic, lazy, uninspiring. I know I sound harsh, but it's the truth, mate. And
it is the truth. Spitting facts.
Do you know what I mean? The next thing I wanted to point out as well was less long balls from Jakob. Now, obviously, if you're under the pump and you have no option, of course, clear your lines. But how many times in that first half, I'm sick of talking about halves, by the way, in that first half, we saw us under the pump, under pressure, played out the back, where we're getting pressed. Actually, quite well, to be honest with you. And I thought it was impressive to see Mavadidi dropping back and helping out defense, linking up the play, and then getting the ball up the pitch of Samari, and then we start our offensive transition. I would like to see Jakob be more confident and playing it out from the back, and also just playing it even short if we have to. Just keep the ball. You know what I mean? Every single time he hoofs it forward, you're basically putting yourself in a 50-50 scenario where it's up to whoever's receiving the ball and whoever's in the opposition. It's still a 50-50 to me, and most likely you're going to lose it because everyone else in the other team's facing the ball. It's a lot easier that way. So obviously there's a time and place. I'm not talking about being ridiculous, but look, in my opinion, I'd like to see him be more comfortable playing it out. He's not that bad playing it short. He's obviously no Mads Hermansen, but in my opinion, we need to see more of that because we've demonstrated that we can play it under the pump against Man City as well. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, sorry, well, just before we do that, one thing I haven't asked is you tell me, what's your score prediction for this game?
I'm going to go for 1-1. It's better than nothing, but we need 3 points. But my heart says 1-1. My brain says another 2-0 defeat, but I'm going to stick with 1-1.
Yeah, I think I would say similar. I'm going to say 2-1 to Leicester, but I think in reality it will probably be 2-1 to Fulham because I think they are a much better team than Crystal Palace. As you said, I think with that West Ham game, if you look at the stats, it looks like they were pretty unlucky not to get something there. Look, we need some luck to go our way. I mean, we did have that luck go our way in that West Ham game, if you remember, because if you look at it statistically, we probably should have lost that one. We ended up winning. We need something like that to happen. But yes, I think it'll be tough. But oh man, we can't have, please, not 7 losses in a row. We need to stop the bleeding. So I'll say 2-1 to be optimistic, but it might just be that over optimism. Anyway, thank you so much. That was a great preview, Luke. Let's hope we can do it. Join us then tomorrow on Matchday Live, and we're going to have the instant reaction as we look at the game. And yeah, keep it locked to Blue Tinted Glasses. We'd love it if you could like this video, leave your comments down below, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and see you next time. Bye-bye.